Alexa, I'm home. So today I want to talk about something that I am personally really passionate about, and that is smart home automation. And I want to talk about some of the ways that I've integrated smart home tech here at my shop, at my house, and kind of give you some use case examples to hopefully give you some ideas of how you can implement this technology in your own shop or house. So I've broken this video down into a few different categories, and I'll have chapters for each of those. First, I'm going to talk about the various smart home ecosystems, and then I'm going to go through the different categories of smart home products, including lighting, garage door control, smart plugs, locks, security cameras, thermostats, sensors, and more. So obviously I have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first choice you're probably going to have to make after deciding to set up a smart home system is to decide which ecosystem you want to go with. And there's really four main contenders. That's Google Home, Amazon which that's what I'm going to say because that's what I have set up here at the shop. And if I say her name, she's going to interrupt me every time. You've also got Apple HomeKit and then Samsung SmartThings. Thankfully, that decision has become a lot less critical because of the introduction of this new smart home protocol called Matter. And Matter is essentially a language that allows these smart home devices to talk to each other and talk to different smart home ecosystems. So when buying smart home products moving forward, I would definitely look for that Matter certified sticker so that you know you'll have the most flexibility with your system. Once you've decided on your ecosystem, the next thing you really want to take a look at is the strength and reliability and coverage of your home or shop Wi-Fi network. Because obviously most of these smart home devices are going to run on your Wi-Fi network. And if you have spotty coverage, that's going to lead to a ton of headaches. So I personally really like mesh Wi-Fi networks. I use Amazon's Eero here at the shop because it works really well with Amazon's smart home system. And then I use Ubiquiti's Amplify system at our house. And I'll have links to all of these products I'm talking about down in the video description below. And I think I'm even going to set up a section in my Amazon storefront with all these different products so you guys can kind of browse through, look at pricing, and see what might work for you and your budget. Now you can move on to actually finding the smart devices you want to use. And let's start with the first category I'm going to talk about, and that is smart lighting. So in the world of smart lighting, you really have two choices, whether you want smart bulbs or LED strips, basically the device itself with smart connectivity, or you want to control your lights with a smart switch. And both options have their pros and cons, but personally I have gone with almost exclusively smart switches because it just gives me the most flexibility when it comes to the specific fixtures I use. Especially in this shop environment, I have these LED troffer lights in the drop ceiling, and being able to control all of those with a smart switch is just the easiest method for me. So when it comes to the specific smart switches I use, there are a few brands I use most often. Number one being Lutron. Their Casita line of smart home light switches is just the most rock solid smart home products I have ever used. They just work. And I think one of the things that makes their system work so well is that all of the Lutron Casita devices connect to my home internet, to my home Wi-Fi through a Lutron hub. And then that hub can connect to the internet and execute those smart home actions. The other huge benefit of the Casita switches is the ability to use the Lutron Pico remotes, and after installing the switch itself, you pair the remote with that switch and you can control that switch, as the name implies, remotely. But the really nice thing is that the Pico remotes come with everything you need to make them look exactly like your standard wall switch. For instance, this right here. You might assume that this is a hardwired switch, but actually this is a Pico remote that controls the light behind me. These remotes work incredibly well. The battery life is insane. I think I've had some of them set up for over 5 years at our house and have never needed to change the battery. And it really makes wiring a lot more simple, especially if you already have existing wiring in a space and want to be able to control those lights from multiple locations. Now, the one downfall of the Casita switches is that they are pretty dang expensive. I think even the most baseline switches with the Pico remote bundle are about $60 each. So obviously that can add up really quickly, because if you think about just how many switches you might have throughout your home or your shop space, it's going to get really, really expensive. So here at the shop, I decided to go with some other less expensive options from Casa TP-Link. Those work really well with Amazon smart home system, and they are incredibly inexpensive. I got 3 packs of those smart switches for less than $30 on sale, which means that each switch costs less than $10, which is pretty nuts. Now, they don't have a Pico remote, but you can use other smart home accessories and get similar functionality. When I roll up to the shop in the morning, I just tell Amazon I'm home, and I have a routine set up where all of the lights that I want to turn on will automatically turn on, so I really don't have to interact with those switches on a regular basis. And obviously smart lighting is pretty much all about convenience, so if you're still gonna be going around turning on and off the switches manually, there's really not much point in having them set up in the first place. So I think that covers the basics of smart lighting, so now let's go check out smart garage door control. So you can see my garage doors that are here at the shop behind me. If you guys missed that video as part of my shop renovation series, definitely go check that out because I went into a little bit more detail about the specific system I'm using. And overall, it's been working really well so far. I can control it from my phone remotely. So if I'm getting deliveries, a lot of times when you're getting freight deliveries, the drivers don't give you a heads up. And so I've been out and about running errands and have been able to let these delivery drivers in remotely, turn off the alarm, turn on the lights. I have a camera set up here facing the garage door so that I can see them make the delivery, and then once they're gone, I can shut everything down and not have to be here in person. If your current garage door isn't smart home enabled, there are a lot of aftermarket options. One brand I've used at the house, which works really well with Apple HomeKit, is Morose, I think is how you pronounce it. But obviously the convenience of being able to have your garage door automatically open when you arrive home, so you can drive right in without even thinking about it, and have it automatically close when you leave is amazing. It's also really nice to be able to double check when you're away to make sure your garage door is closed, because I know there's been a lot of times when I've gone on vacation and thought, did I close the garage door? And with a smart garage door opener, you can double check that. So now let's move on to smart plugs. So of all these smart home tech in a workshop environment, I think smart plugs are definitely one of the most powerful options because most of the things we interact with in a workshop environment are not in any way smart home enabled. So things like lighting, if you have your standard kind of hanging shop lighting that plugs into the wall, you could automate those with a smart plug. If you have air filters set up in your shop to collect that airborne dust, you can automate those. You can even get super fancy and add some sensors that can track the air quality and automatically turn those air filters on when the air quality gets bad. And I'll talk a little bit more about sensors later. You can add remote and voice control to your dust collection system. If your dust collector didn't come with a remote, it makes it super easy to control it anywhere from the shop with a simple voice command. In this shop environment, I use this smart plug to control my commercial dehumidifier because this shop is half below grade. It gets pretty humid in here, especially when it rains. And so I can have this dehumidifier come on automatically when I leave the shop, or what I'm gonna do in the future is set up a humidity sensor. So that way it will automatically turn on this smart plug when the relative humidity gets to a certain point, and then it can automatically turn that off when the space is dehumidified. And now let's move on to another huge category in smart home automation, smart locks. So when it comes to these smart home devices that can add the most amount of convenience to your setup, I definitely think smart locks are pretty hard to beat. Case in point, between my shop and my house, I do not have a single key to get in and out of either building. Now to make sure I don't accidentally get locked out in case one of the locks runs out of battery, I do have multiple entry points with 2 separate smart locks with 2 separate levels of battery. Also, most smart locks do have a mechanical key option, and some of them even have a charging point. So if the lock unexpectedly runs out of battery, you can get it up and running again. As far as specific brands, at my house, I use Schlage's new line of Encode Plus locks, which have the super cool feature of Apple HomeKey, meaning I can use my Apple Watch or phone to just tap the lock, it will automatically unlock. Their one downside is they are extremely expensive. So here at the shop, I use the Eufy brand of smart locks. They're a lot less expensive. Another brand that's really making a push in the smart lock category is Aquara, and they have both a smart lock and a smart doorbell that you can pair together. And then when you get a doorbell notification, if it's somebody you want to let in, you can automatically unlock your door all within the same app. It's super, super nice. And especially if you use Apple HomeKit, those seem like a great option. And speaking of doorbells, let's go ahead and move into the next category, which is security cameras and smart doorbells. And obviously these are another great option in the smart home automation world. You can use doorbells and security cameras to trigger all sorts of automations. And from the standpoint of being able to monitor your home or shop while you're away, it's really hard to beat smart doorbells and security cameras. As I mentioned, I use Eufy smart locks here at the shop, and I also use their doorbell. And one of the big bonuses there is that it comes with free cloud video storage. In the world of smart home security cameras, there are tons of different options. Casa TP-Link, who I mentioned previously with the smart switches, makes a bunch of them that I've implemented a few of here at the shop. I also use some of SimpliSafe's cameras, and if you saw my last video about the major flooding here at the shop, the only way I got that footage was by having that SimpliSafe camera set up. One other specific use case I'm gonna set up here at the shop is a CNC camera. So that way I can monitor my CNC if I'm working over here in my office and don't have visual line of sight with the CNC. I can put that on my Amazon Show, keep that feed running and see if there's any sort of problems, if the machine crashes or anything like that. And I think that's a great option if you run tools like CNCs or laser cutters or 3D printers in a shop, where you wanna leave those machines unattended even while in the same building and still be able to monitor them. So I think that covers security cameras. So now let's move on to thermostats. As you can see, I have smart thermostats set up here at the shop as well. I think from an energy saving standpoint, that's definitely one of the best smart home options you can implement. Having a smart thermostat makes scheduling a lot easier. I have this thermostat set to pre-warm or pre-cool this workspace before I get here in the morning, which is a really nice touch. And then the system automatically turns off when I leave. This is Amazon Smart Thermostat, which obviously works well with their smart home system, and it's also super cheap, which is a nice bonus. But I've used Ecobee products at my house, which works great with Apple HomeKit. And obviously Google Nest was one of these smart home products that I think really helped to boost this whole smart home category. If you have mini split units in your shop, you can also control those with smart home products. I know the Mr. Cool line of mini splits that I use in my shop and in the tiny house both have smart home features built in with this little Wi-Fi USB dongle. If your mini split doesn't have that built in, there are aftermarket products. I know I used some devices from Sensibo at my previous shop to help control the mini splits there. And I think that mostly covers thermostats. So now let's move on to smart sensors. I'm sweating like a pig. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, sensors can be really powerful when it comes to smart home automations because you can automate a ton of things with the various sensors that are available to you. Because I think that's one of the traps that people fall into when initially setting up smart home stuff is they set up all these things because it's kind of cool and they can show it off to their friends, but it doesn't really save them any time. There's no actual automation to it. So with things like sensors, whether that's motion sensors, humidity sensors, air quality sensors, water sensors, there's tons of different options out there, and you can easily automate all kinds of different things by utilizing these sensors. One example of that, as you might have seen in my previous video, was using some smart water leak sensors to detect if I had any water leaks throughout the shop. I set them up under every sink, up in the attic where the water heater is, and if any of those detect any water, they will automatically shut off my water here at the shop with this electronic water shutoff valve. From a workshop perspective, I think air quality sensors are a really great option because not only does it allow you to monitor the quality of your air, whether that's with airborne dust or VOCs, you can get notifications when those levels get really high to kind of remind you to put on PPE, but they can also turn on machines like air filters to automatically clean up that air without you having to do anything. In that same sensor category are smoke alarms, which are obviously super important for your safety, but they're especially important in a shop environment like this, because obviously if you're doing things like welding or running a CNC, having a smoke alarm to obviously notify you that there's a fire can help keep you safe, but you can also set up other automations like changing the color of lights or playing an audible sound on the smart speakers throughout your space, again to help notify you that there is a fire. As you can see, sensors are a really powerful category of smart home tech that I'm only just now dipping my toes into. Next, I want to talk about smart speakers, which are probably going to be one of the main ways you interact with your smart home system. If you're using Apple HomeKit, you're probably going to be using HomePods or HomePod Minis, both of which are great. And the newer HomePods and HomePod Minis can also help to improve your Wi-Fi strength for your smart home system using Thread, which is another kind of newer smart home tech. If you're on the Amazon side, you're going to be looking at their Echo devices. I have a bunch of the Dot devices, which are super cheap, set up throughout this shop space, and those are great for quickly interacting with the Amazon system, but the speakers on those are really not the greatest quality. That being said, I just picked up this Echo Studio, which sounds incredible, and it also has Amazon's smart home assistant built in. Not gonna say her name once again, don't want her to wake up, but I'm really impressed with the sound on this thing. And I also picked up the Echo Show 15 recently, and I have that set up in my office. I use that for monitoring the cameras throughout the shop and outside the shop. I can also use it for checking weather, tracking my deliveries. I can import my calendars in there, so it acts as a really nice smart home dashboard for me that I can quickly glance at while I'm working in my office. Besides being able to listen to music and work with these smart home assistants, these smart speakers are also great for getting quick conversions if you're needing to convert from inches to millimeters in the shop, or ounces to tablespoons in your kitchen. They're also great for setting timers if your hands are dirty, if you're working with epoxy or something like that. So I definitely would not want to have a shop without at least one smart speaker because they are definitely really handy to have around. If you've got any more tips on smart home tech, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to see some of the ways you guys have integrated smart home tech in your shops. Again, I'll have links to all the products I talked about down in the video description below. If it's your first time here, go ahead and get subscribed and ring the notification bell so you don't miss my future videos. And last, if you want to support me, I sell merch. I have plans available for a lot of my woodworking projects, and I have both Patreon and YouTube members set up. So go check one of those out. All right, thanks for watching, y'all, and until next week, happy building. Alexa, I'm leaving.
Okay, I'll start guarding now.